4th of 6. I want to thank you for being on the line. Just some housekeeping details before we start. Because this is a webinar, unfortunately, your phones are typically muted, and it's difficult to unmute. So it makes for a hard roundtable discussion. So if you have questions, I asked on the chat window in the bottom if you could just type your question in there, and then what we will do is we will try to address those as we go. And there'll also be a little bit of time at the end where we can see if there's any questions that pop up. My name is Greg Groneman, and I'm going to present today, and we're going to kind of talk through paid search and if it's worth it. And so before we start, a little bit about my background, because of the nature of our industry. A lot of times I try to start each presentation with a little bit about who you're talking to. A lot of folks are willing to give you advice in the industry, and a lot of folks have never done it. So in my experience, I have led marketing departments in the past. I was involved with Monitronics, where we bought the business from ADT, and I also work very closely with Monitronics' dealer channel. So I've seen firsthand the struggles that a small security company faces when trying to make sense of marketing. I work for N2O. We specialize in working with the security industry. We've worked with hundreds of local, regional, and national companies. We also operate a buying consortium for security leads on behalf of about 100 local security companies called the Security Dealer Association. And we do a bunch of stuff. But the reason I always start with this is that we know your pain. We know the kinds of things that you struggled with, and a lot of times we can have some decent perspective, because there's a lot of decisions to be made when you start thinking about marketing. As far as last month, for those of you that were on the call or weren't on the call, this, like I said earlier, this is the number 4 in a series of 6. Last month, during month 3, we looked at a couple things. We looked at, it was the point of the presentation was really around marketing metrics, and we wanted to really break things up, and we looked at a lot of the popular marketing programs, but specifically promotional marketing versus event-based marketing, and the differences between the two. We also then drilled down into the event-based part of the marketing solution, and when we say event-based, we typically were talking about event-triggered activities such as break-in and moves and relocations and things like that. And we looked at from Facebook to Yellow Pages and how to look at each tool and the metrics you should expect from those. So if you missed that, or you want a refresher, that is posted on Monitronics.net, and it is posted on our website. If you go to N2O Marketing, you'll see a Monitronics logo. You can click on that on the front page, or you can actually type this URL in, and you can actually rewatch that broadcast. It was recorded and is there for you. You also can download the slides if that's something you want to review with members of your team, or if there's a particular slide that maybe caught your attention that you wanted to study. That's something you can obviously pull out of the deck and look at it more closely. So to that point, this session is recorded and will be in the same place, probably starting tomorrow. So if it's something where this is something you'd like to share with members of your staff, or just want to think about some more, this presentation will be available to you as well. As far as the calendar, these are the topics we've talked about so far, and I won't go back through them, but you can kind of see the list. I do want to talk about next month that our topic will be social media, and we're going to talk about how to really leverage that as a tool and how to convert that to revenue. And then they are going to end the series with really kind of back to where we started, which is how to really grow from door knocking and best practices for remote-based selling and things like that. So I do want to kind of plug those. Those dates are already set, and they are available on Monitronics' website, as well as if you go to that same link that are on our site, you can see the dates and times for those. And you should also get an email invitation from us inviting you as a previous attendee to be able to attend those. The point of today, so we're going to talk about paid search. And I just want to kind of put a caveat, because, like I said, we work with a lot of security companies, and we know that most of the marketing things will make your eyes glaze over, and you typically think, well, that's not something that's really applicable to me. And the point of today is, we're not going to give you a how-to course. I know that probably most of you, if you're going to do it, you're probably going to have someone do it for you, or you'll outsource it. So what we chose to do today is to really take a more of an executive view of this thing. And even those of you that don't own the company, I still think it's something that you look at, even as you learn, and you say you're in a marketing role, you need to learn how to do it, but you should also look at some of the metrics. And there's a lot of choices when you start looking at paid search. So really, which ones are the right ones, and should you do all? Should you do one? And then how do you spread your budget across them all? So we're going to kind of dance around some of the main things, and we're going to try to provide throughout this some executive level insights that I hopefully will be good for you, and you'll be able to use and as a takeaway. All right, so just I never want to presume everyone understands a lot of the terminology that marketing people throw around, so I always like to kind of level set the conversation. So to start, let's just start with Google. I want to kind of do some terminology introduction. So I just typed in home alarm system in Columbus, and voila, here's what I got. And so I want to kind of explain what some of this stuff means. So in general, if you I don't know if you can see on the screen, but it's the first two results. It's actually the first three results, and they have a little blue square around them. Those are paid. And then to the right, over in this area, I don't know if you can see my cursor, this area, all of these are all paid. And these are ones that you use Google AdWords, and you pay for these ads to show up, and it's a bidding solution. So the more you bid, the higher you place. And for the top three bidders, what's nice is they actually used to kind of do a little bit, now it's pretty common, they put them over here. And what's great is these are very coveted, very hard to get, and very expensive now, when at one point they weren't. But this is an area that a lot of people don't necessarily connect, that these results are paid. So very, very good place to be, probably the best place to be if you're going to pay, but you have to pay a premium for it. But these are nonetheless paid. The other terminology you're going to hear through this presentation is organic. Sometimes natural, you'll hear the term. You'll hear the term search engine optimization. A lot of people, because they don't want to say that long word, will just say SEO. And these are just how you would normally show up, and it's these kinds of results. Why are these popular? We're going to explore that later, but it typically, the average consumer, when they're searching on Google and they see an organic ranking pop up, in general, they oftentimes will click that because they feel like Google has prioritized that for a reason, and that it's a more reputable, better quality. So in general, across the board, you're going to find that an organic ranking trumps a paid ranking any and every day of the week. For the other component you're going to talk about today, and I just wanted to show you, is the local search. And there's lots of variations of what local search means. Some people will leverage the actual national programs and just target everything local, which is, we do recommend that. But there's also ways that you can leverage local traffic, and so that's Google Places. We're going to talk about that today, but you will see there's a couple spots where that shows up. It typically shows up when you use the name of a city in the title bar, which more and more people do, and then it also shows up on the map. Now, obviously, Columbus isn't very big, but if this said Houston or something like that, you would see dots just go everywhere. And the idea is that this is what connects you with your local business. These ads are free. However, you do pay to place these ads for priority, because in some cities, you're one of 100 local and close security companies, so you can pay to kind of be up top. So let's talk about some statistics real quick, because I think these are always interesting. There was a search engine marketing professional organization, and they do a lot of work in the space, and they've got some great data that I thought would be worth at least starting with as a backdrop. So search engine marketing, which is mainly what we're talking about today, and that term is broader than paid search. It's kind of in general everything, rose 16% to almost a $20 billion industry in 2011. So it's a fast-growing component of what you do in marketing. In fact, if you kind of look at social media, which is a paid search component as well, 47% of the companies in North America are now using that. So this is something that also is a growing component. We're going to talk about that as well. They did some surveys, and they found that 84% of the survey respondents cited local paid search as either highly significant or significant. So I think one of the things we're seeing is, and it's almost the Groupon effect, where at one point Google was very broad, and Groupon was, I want to find a a solution right in my neighborhood, and they allowed you to do that. I think that's now permeating, and you're seeing so many Groupon knockoffs out there that are offering local deals, and I think all the big, mega global search components are all getting down into that local environment, because that's really how people think and that's how people shop. And in the security space, I think that's very, very powerful, because our industry is made up predominantly of small local security companies servicing a local area. So I think this is something you should definitely look at. And then if you just think about if you're going to do it, how do you budget it? And this just kind of reinforces the trend. At one point, national was it, and now you're seeing a big shift. 34% of your paid search budget in the average company is around local ad spend. So, your key takeaways from these numbers would be that paid search is pretty important, and local and social search are on the rise. So I think the big question is, why is paid search important? And I think the thing you have to think about in the commercial space, it's important, but it's critical in the residential space. And it's frankly because the average homeowner doesn't think they need a security system. They think they've got a gun, they've got a dog, they live in a safe neighborhood. But then one day something happens. They read an article in the paper, or the window is broken on their front door, and it sends them into a bit of a panic state for about 3 days. And they're fairly irrational. Even a move, right? Even though there's not been a trigger to them that caused them to be irrational, they're still operating irrationally because they're stressed out because they're moving. So nonetheless, there's a sense of urgency applied, and they've got to make a decision. So that's why we say there's no warm lead in the security space. It's either cold or hot. So they've lived in their little bubble up until today, and now they're red hot for 3 days, and then they're going to sign a 3-year contract, and then they're going to go be cold again. So we do have a narrow window to market to them, and if you follow what people do, they go, as we talked about last month, they go to the Yellow Pages and they go to Google. Well, the way you get on Google initially is through paying and buying ads. So it is a very real way to map to leads that close very well. In fact, next to somebody actually filling out a form on your website and a referral, those are typically the best kind of referrals. This is one of the probably second or third best returns on your investment when you start looking at how to get people's eyeballs and get people's attention. So let's talk about organic, which is kind of the other piece of really showing up on Google. And we introduced it earlier, but I want to give you some statistics on it. 54% of the companies expect to increase spending on search engine optimization this year. It is one of these things that everybody's trying to get to. On the average, companies spend 43%, or companies spent 43% more on SEO in 2011 versus 2010. It's a giant, giant jump. And I think the reason this is happening, we're going to talk about it later, but the reason this is happening is that to buy your Google paid words are getting more and more expensive, especially in the security space. I mean, I always say the industry is an industry of 3 brands you've heard of and 100,000 you haven't. And the challenge that is presented from that is that you've got 100,000 people all trying to be heard at once, and when that many people are trying to be heard, it's noise. So you've got to find a way to stand out, and so it's caused the pricing to go up fairly high to be on Google AdWords. So many people are turning to the organic ranks and building a website first, right, and then beginning to pick the keywords that define them, that they think they can win, and then starting to embed those keywords in your site and being ranked accordingly, and those are results, and those create leads, and those create traffic that turns to revenue for you and creates a lead source. So both are very powerful. So there was also a survey on it, and if you just take the top 2 reasons why you would do an SEO program, 42% of them stated that it's driving traffic to their website. And I always look at traffic as one of these things where, what they really meant to say is leads, and that's the number 2 response. Generating leads is the main goal. And that's the reason you want traffic. You want people to see your brand, they want to know you're there, and ultimately buy from you, which is a lead. So I almost mentally add those numbers together. But my point is that the purpose of all this is getting a tangible thing that you can do something with afterwards. So SEO is very popular, and you can see the number 2 reasons are the traffic and leads. So let's kind of define some. We've talked about the 2 terms between organic and search engine optimization. Let's kind of look at them a little bit more closely. On the search engine, the organic part, which we talked about just a second ago, there's some pros and cons to that. I think you kind of have to go in with your eyes wide open to know what you really want out of it. The pros would be for the search engine optimization is it has a very good long-term return on investment. And a lot of times we'll call that the snowball effect, and that it's one of the things where you have to pay some money now, but as you start to rank higher and as it compounds, you find that your ranking itself on Google is free, right? What's better than that? But you do have to pay to get the site structured to do that. So there is more upfront, but longer term, as you just kind of amortize that expense, you'll find that it is very, very profitable. And it's one of these things that makes sense to do that on a website. Now, obviously, you have to have a website first, but I'm presuming most of you know that. On organic, what also happens is the volume is higher. Not initially, because obviously you can buy as much as you want on the paid AdWords, but as you begin to rank, it's kind of like you're getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and you can start to take on more and more words, and it's got this ripple effect across the internet. And what you find is you start to rank, exponentially in all these random words and all these random phrases and all these random places. So from a scalability perspective, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's one of these things that continues to proliferate and grow. Also, when you do rank, I think the general perception of people is that it's a higher quality, and that it's kind of like being endorsed by Google that whatever they typed into the search blank, that you are the best possible solution for that. And so, in general, implied or not, it's viewed as a higher quality, and people tend to pay more attention to that versus a paid ad. So some of the cons would be, obviously, you have to pay for someone to do that for you unless you have that expertise in-house. I usually recommend outsourcing that because, in past companies that I've worked at, you can bring that in-house, but it just for some reason seems like when you staff for that position, it's kind of like they get out of the race, and it's such a fast-moving component and requires some expertise, and it's just one of these things that when you have someone on staff, it's almost like you freeze time, and that's they do what they're doing, but the minute the industry and all these technical things are changing, they just sometimes can lose touch with that. So if you do hire someone to do that, you definitely want to make sure they're still plugged into all the latest stuff that's going on. It is labor intensive. It requires it's not just a one-time thing. It's something that you really have to think about as a monthly expense. And it should be over time self-funding, but nonetheless it is a check you have to write monthly. It's not something that is a big bang you do today and then you just shut it off. So it is something that you do have to kind of commit to. But it is a snowball evolution, and that's what I mentioned earlier. But I mean, it's like you roll that little snowball down the hill, and as it rolls down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger, and that's kind of what you get out of that. If you kind of compare and contrast that to paid search, and I'm using paid search in a broad capacity, whether you look at it from a national, local, or even leveraging social media, the paid ads through social media, they all kind of have this similar dynamics. So the pros to that would be it's easy to set up. I mean, Google has made it very easy to advertise. Now, doing it right and doing it and leveraging your dollars is an art, but just getting on Google isn't hard if you're willing to put some money up. It is measurable. You can actually track your clicks, impressions. You can even track revenue. You can put code on certain pages that if you want them to fill out a form, and if they fill out the form, they get a thank you page. You can put code on the thank you page, and then Google knows if it converted into a real lead, and they can actually track all that metrics for you. So it's really nice from a vantage point of being able to see if that what happened to that dollar you spent, and if it turned into revenue. And you don't have to develop anything. You don't have to have somebody hired to work with, like on SEO, where you have to hire somebody or contract someone to work on your site. You don't have to do that with paid. You just kind of pop your credit card in and put your words in, and you're off to the races, so that you don't have to do a lot on your end. Some cons to it would be it's more expensive, and it's an auction-like mentality where you're always bidding to be on page one. So it's not only expensive, but it gets more expensive as you go. So it's one of these things where and we'll talk about it later, but I believe it's always should be an ingredient in the secret sauce, but it should never be your sole ingredient because it's just one of these components that grows, and it's something that really needs you really can't even set it and forget it, because the words that you may like today are morphing and changing, and it's one of these things where you kind of got to pick your words and rank today, and then always be on the lookout for new search phrases. And I mean, there was a time when you would buy in keywords that were like the word security, right? But then all of a sudden, you start getting a bunch of people that thought they were looking for Social Security and driving up your price. So then you put security systems, and then, then you were getting car security systems and other things like that. So you got to refine it even more. And so you're finding that people are even searching more like 4, 5, 6 words in their search phrase. I mean, some people actually type a question. They'll say, "Where can I get a good home security system?" So that's a moving target, and it's getting more and more granular, and you kind of got to manage that. The last con I would say would be, well, I guess the second to last, is that it is transactional in nature. You're paying for that click. The good news is you don't pay for impressions, which impression means that your ad was shown, which is good, but it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it just means somebody saw it along with everyone else's ad. What matters is if they clicked on it. If they clicked on it, that's when you pay, but that's also when you begin that commerce, and that you begin that potential relationship. So it's transactional. Every person that shows up and clicks, you pay for them, and so there's no free ride. So that's why I always say it's not something that you want to base your whole strategy on, because it only gets more expensive with time. But there is potential for ad blindness. I mean, there are times you'll wonder, especially when you're dealing with a content network, was that real? So there's some vagueness about it, because what Google does is it has partnerships with millions and millions of websites that repurpose Google content. And there's always that kind of looming suspicion, was there any kind of click fraud going on, or you just never know. Is it? So there's always that kind of gray area you just have to kind of manage and think about. So as we talk about search engine optimization, just a kind of a little side point, I always liken you really thinking about SEO to like building a pool. You got to use the right equipment. I mean, you can use a shovel to build a pool, or you can get some kind of bulldozer or backhoe to build a pool. Both will get the pool built, but some are a little bit more efficient than the other. I could tell you, using the equipment is faster, cheaper, and you're going to get a better product. If you're using a shovel, it's going to be a while, and it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of people. And unfortunately, the industry is made up of shovel users, where we always kid around and we say, the industry's full of, or the search engine optimization world's full of, a guy, right? And not in any sexist way, but they'll say, "I got a guy," right? Almost in quotes. "Oh, I got a guy that does that," and it's some individual that does this for them, and it's okay, but you're really not leveraging technology to its fullest. I can tell you when N2O does search engine optimization strategies for a company, we use some of the best technology out there that goes out and works. We always say the best way to fight a robot's with a robot. So we use technology to go and basically replicate what Google's doing, but instead of using that information to judge us and rank us on Google, we use that information to help us make decisions on how to improve the website. So when you're looking at it, if it's something you want to pursue, I just encourage you, as you're talking to different people out there, look for somebody that's leveraging technology and helping implement those technical solutions, because I think you'll be happier with it, and you'll find that it's more cost-effective in the long run. So let's spend a little bit of time on search engine optimization. I'm just going to talk a little, 1 or 2 more slides about that. Number one, what is it? We talked earlier. Main goal is to get ranked on Google or Bing for free. I mean, it costs money to be optimized, but the actual ranking part is free. And as I said earlier, you get that high credibility from being naturally ranked. So what is it exactly? It's rewriting your website so you naturally rank higher for keywords, and those are strictly just phrases, and that is really the secret sauce to the whole thing. And like I said earlier, it requires that kind of ongoing management, and even after the site is perfect and you're loving it and it's all working right, you then have to shift your energy onto developing links and backlinks to your site, because that's kind of how Google views it all. As other sites that as they link to you, it's almost like they're voting for you, and those votes or links grow and aggregate, and the better the site, the more power that link has, and the worse the site, obviously, that sometimes can have a negative effect on you. But you know, we're talking thousands, not hundreds. So I mean, if you've got a website and you're competing against somebody and they've got 60,000 backlinks to their site, they're obviously going to get prioritized over you. So because of that, it's difficult to for someone just to go buy a domain and build a website and take it live and expect to show up all over Google. It's just, you know, you actually are almost handicapped in a way that a new site typically takes a while to just get traction and get that credibility with Google. So there is an ongoing component to it. So what do we recommend on this? You know, look, the main point is, as you're thinking about this, the keywords you pick are everything. I mean, if you don't get the right keywords, that's almost the critical success factor is the keywords you pick. And the problem people have is when they write a website is they use terminology that they feel like best represents what they do. And that's great. From you know, someone reading it and they're like, wow, I read that sentence and it very clearly and concisely told me what they do. But the problem is that that's not how search engines work. So you really have to spend a lot of time, or you need someone that knows what they're doing to spend a lot of time. In fact, the most valuable thing of any search engine optimization exercise is the keyword analysis that they do in the front. A lot of times they'll charge you, you know, past companies I've seen that cost up to 10 grand. But it's that keyword analysis and picking words that have not amazing search volume, but just good search volume. You know, under 20,000 local monthly searches, or when I say local, not global, right? So U.S.-based searches, and then low competition. Those are the two, you know, yin and yang of the whole thing, and you kind of have to have both. And if you can get both, and you can write the site in the right way, you actually can see some traffic. But that is it. So if you're going to spend money, spend it on the keyword research, and make sure you're going after really good keywords that people do search on, and that you actually have a shot at winning, and you're not outgunned. The other is just be patient. You know, so many people rush into this and they expect instant results. I mean, it takes months to get ranked, and you just have to understand the way it works, and you have to know its process. And if it's one of these things that you've got a finite budget and you're going to just, you know, you better see results in the first few weeks or even the first month or two, you're probably better off saving the money and just keeping that either in a pay-per-lead program or in an actual paid search program, because you're just going to have some patience through this, because it does take a while to build and do. I recommend outsourcing. Finding good, as I said earlier, finding good people is expensive, and even though it's a monthly service, I still recommend keeping, you know, finding someone that does this every day, and someone that can, you know, to kind of, you know, to use an analogy, keep their saw sharp so that they can continue to be effective. So I also, as we said earlier, looking for a hybrid approach. You know, people using machines. You know, using our pool analogy, you want somebody that's leveraging technology, and if they are, then that's a better investment for you. And you know, you also have access to those tools as well. So, and you're going to find, if you're just thinking budget, I mean, I've seen systems being advertised online as cheap as $200 a month, but the problem with a lot of those low-end solutions, frankly, is they don't actually do anything. And you end up spending $200 a month forever and never actually moving the ball. And I've seen companies work for one about a month ago. It was $5 grand a month. So, and that's a lot more work. So I can tell you, N2O, our search engine optimization package is $750 a month. So we're somewhere in the middle, but you get several hours of work as well as some cool tools. So my point is really just us as a benchmark in there. We're somewhere kind of on the lower end of that, but just to give you from a budgetary perspective what you should expect, and I wouldn't shop based on price because I think you're going to be disappointed with it over the long run. So if you kind of start with paid search and search engine optimization and kind of moving into paid search, I think you've got two of the big things, you know, that you want to look at. One is Google, and probably one is Bing. Those are the two big ones. And so if we just talk about Google right now, why would you want to be on Google versus Bing or versus Facebook? Google is the dominant search engine. They're easy to use, and they have a massive content network, which it could be bad and it could be good, but I found that typically it's okay if you know how to manage it right. But it gets your ad out everywhere. but it is expensive for the top slots. It is, and it is very competitive. So you just kind of have to know that going into it. From Bing and Yahoo, they've merged, not the companies, but the search components merged into Bing. So you know, that's nice because you don't have to advertise on both. You can just advertise on Bing, and you get some credit from that. So why is that a good search engine? Well, number one, when you buy a laptop from you know, Best Buy or whatever, and you bring it home and you open up Internet Explorer, its search engine is set to Bing. So by default, you know, most of society, you know, when it comes to stuff like this, are fairly lazy, and they're not going to, you know, unless they're Google loyalists, a lot of times they just leave it. So I think just because of that simple fact alone, they're gaining market share. Their search is good, and there's some things I like about it. Specifically, the fact that Bing's, you know, Google has changed their algorithm to downplay, you know, keywords, and like, you know, like if you were to buy the domain, you know, with home alarm systems, and you were proud of it, and you were to log that with Google and Bing, and it was a brand new site, you're going to find you're going to rank higher on Bing than Google, because Bing still places value on the keywords being in your domain, while Google doesn't. They've actually, part of their Panda update a while back, actually dialed that value point back, and so it actually doesn't impact it as much as, you know, quality links and quality articles and things like that. So just a little side note. But with Yahoo and Bing, you know, obviously those were two, probably the second, number third big powerhouses out there. So, but they've merged. They're still second behind Google because Google's so far ahead of everybody else. They are cheaper than Google, but I would say slightly. That's the thing. When it first came out, it was a lot cheaper, but now it's really not, and still competitive. So those are kind of comparing the two. If you have a finite amount of money and you got to spend it, you know, which do you use? Well, these are kind of why you would pick one over the other. So let's kind of look at some key strategies for just paid search. And at this point, I'm going to kind of lump Google, Yahoo, and Bing together as paid search. And then we're going to look at paid search on Facebook here in a second. So let's just talk about the paid search as a whole. So what are some strategies that you should be thinking about as an executive and as you're looking at the things that you want to make sure are in your recipe here? Number one is you want to make sure you're broad, and you want your click cost to be low. The thing is, in the security space, your keywords will range from nothing, but the real ones you're going to want, the ones with volume, are going to start in the $4 to $5 range, and they're going to range all the way up to $30, which to me, $30 a click is insane. We deliver leads, actual leads, to our customers for $20. So if you're going to spend 30 on a click, then, you know, call me. but people do all the time. We work with companies that do. So I would go broader with your keywords, and I would try to get a real low click cost. We typically shoot in the $1 to $5 or $6 range, sometimes up to $8, but I would look for those maybe secondary keywords where you can keep that budget. And to do that, though, you've got to have hundreds of keywords in a campaign. You can't pick 5 or 6. You need to actually use the Google keyword tool, and you got to come up with a much broader set. If you're a beginner, there's all kinds of really neat ways that Google tries to make your life easier by automating things. And I can tell you, if you're new, you're just going to get burned by it. You're better off, there's a manual bidding. And what we recommend is that you kick them all on and say, okay, I'll pay you $3 a click for any of these, right? And then wait a while. And then what you'll find is certain keywords will actually start giving you data and say, look, if you spend $3.50 on this one word, you would actually get this many more clicks over to your website. So then I would individually, on the keywords that you think you have a good shot of winning, I would bump them up individually. But obviously, if you let Google control your budget, then you can't be mad with how Google spends your money. So. And also, I always place a priority on local variation. So if you're going to buy home security versus home security in the Bronx, I would place a priority on home security in the Bronx, because if someone's typing that in, they're going to be more likely to respond to your ad. So I would obviously pay a little bit more for that. So kind of a reiteration of the other point, local keywords with a higher conversion. I would also set a daily budget, because this is one of the things, if you don't, you'll get burned. And you'll know when they turn off, because it'll tell you how many clicks you're missing, because Google wants to help you spend your money. So I would set a daily budget. I usually recommend $50 a day for a small dealer. If you spend more than that, it gets a little out of control sometimes. Some people even will spend 25 bucks a day, but it really depends on what you're bidding for all your words and what they're converting at. So you kind of, one of the things you have to kind of keep an eye on when you're managing it. And the biggest thing though is, don't shortchange the ad writing process. When you got to write your ad, think about what you're writing. Don't just slap in whatever you feel like it. Actually think about, how can I leverage a keyword in there? And always, all cases, talk about that you're local, markets you serve, really try to leverage that, because that is the difference. That is your few seconds. They see your ad, you want to get their attention, and don't be overly sensational. Just try to grab them with something like, if I see an ad and it says free, 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 I'm not believing it. It's kind of like, we're raised with our parents telling us, nothing good's free, and so I'd rather see, I'm in Houston, Texas. Hey, we are the security company that services Houston. That would grab my attention more than free, free, free. So think about what you're saying, think about your ads, and because that really is the kind of precursor for spending your money. And then there is this content network thing, and what a lot of kind of newbies do is they just kind of bid everywhere, and that's a big mistake. We usually recommend setting up 2 campaigns, one that is for Google only, and then one is for the content network only, and then we usually drop the content network bids down to like $1. And what's great about that is it's a real cheap way to get clicks, but it goes across millions of sites and your ads out there, and you're showing up, but you're not overpaying, which is what unfortunately a lot of times happens. You'll look at your whole AdWord budget, and half of it was from the content network, and you're spending $5 a click to be on some second-rate site somewhere, and that's the area. If there was ever to be click fraud or any gray area of, am I really getting my value out of this, it's in that content network. So dial the money down and bid less and really kind of manage it that way. Local volume. So let's just kind of shift down into the local thing. I mean, there are searches locally, and you can see, we showed this slide last month, but it fit well here. There are people typing in very specific local phrases, and this is part of the art of it. So as you're putting together keywords, you definitely want to think about all the cities that you service and variations of the word home alarm system or home security or business security or video surveillance or whatever, and include those in there. Even in the residential side, a lot of times we'll recommend terms around moving, and things like that. So anything that maybe sounds like a life event, break-ins and that kind of stuff, all are good search terms. And you only pay if they click, so that's a good thing. And like I said earlier, it's a moving target. This quote from Google we talked about last month, but every day, 16% of the searches on Google have never actually been searched before, according to Google. So if you just think about that, that's what makes it a fluid, fast evolving, and fast growing thing, is that it's always new and it's always changing, and people are phrasing things differently, so that's why you got to kind of manage it and stay on top of it. But that's part of what makes it nice, right? If it didn't have that, then Google would not be that great, because everyone would bid up the good words, and then it would just be, you wouldn't be affordable, right? You wouldn't have a shot, because you're not going to spend $30 a click, so you're like, well, I'm bailing, right? So with this, what's nice is that because it's evolving and every day 16% of the searches have never been searched before, that gives people an opportunity to, maybe security companies is $30 a click, but I can be security companies in Los Angeles, California, that exact phrase, and maybe that's $4. It gives me a chance to actually get ahead of that wave and actually be ranked on that. So that's part of why it makes it worth doing. Let's talk briefly about local search. Google Places is very powerful. In fact, this is something that they came out with, and this is an actual Google Places page, and these are free to do. So if you just go to Google, type in Google Places, you can type these up, and you should have them for your business. But you can see, like in Houston, all these little dots. You have to pay if you want to be the guys up top. You have to pay money. So and it works just like their paid ad system. So that's probably money well spent, because these are local people, and you're going to get prioritized for someone if they're searching from within your service area. So this is actually very powerful, and we do recommend doing this. But absolutely, step one is just getting a Google Places set up, and especially if you're servicing a small local area. So what else is cool about Google Places is you get a page, and here's like Monitronics, and you can kind of see it, and they're not frilly. And the idea is that this is, you know, your contact information, you know, and directions to get there, the map, you know, so that part's really nice, and this is where, when you see a lot of the statistics in magazines about mobile applications and things like that, a lot of times, like I know with my iPhone, I have a Google app. I can click the Google app, and I can say in there, hey, I want to, you know, say whatever I'm looking for, and it'll pop up and give me the phone numbers. It's coming from stuff like this. So as mobile and devices like that are more popular, you got to trigger it through this. So this is where you have to set these up. The thing you have to watch, though, is people can write a review about you. So you have to monitor that. If someone could very easily click write a review and say, these guys are horrible, right? And now that's tied to your brand. So if you're questioning your own skills, then you may not want to go down this path, because you know, it's like, you know, if they're happy, they don't tell anybody. If they're mad, they tell everybody. So you do have to kind of watch when people post on there. So let's talk about Facebook for a second. In general with Facebook, there are ads. Facebook used to not have ads, and as a matter of fact, they fought it forever and ever and ever, and as they got really big, they had to do that. And you can see on the right, it showcases whatever image you want to put in there and the verbiage, and then you can click, you know, how many people have liked their page, and it's kind of there to the right. It operates a lot like Google and Yahoo and things like that, or Bing. So I'll give you an idea of how to compare and how to think about these. One of the biggest metrics used in marketing is your click-through rate, and what that basically means is how relevant was your ad, right? Because you don't pay for it to show up, but you pay when they click, right? So when they're clicking, how often are they clicking? So every time it shows up, what percentage of them are actually clicking? And obviously this helps you acquire leads more cost effectively. You know, your position will go up, your ranking will go up, and all these different things as your click-through rates are higher. So if you just look at Google, the average click-through rate, according to Google, is 2%, but I've seen it in the security space, 0.5% up to 2%. But my point is that it's okay because you're only paying if they click, but my point is that it's a pretty good yield. And the reason it's a good yield is because these people are actually actively searching for something. They've typed it in, I need to find, you know, it's a search engine, right? I need to find this, and they click it and they hit submit, and you know, here's your result. While Facebook, on the other hand, is not. Very few people are going to Facebook and saying, I got to find a security system on Facebook. They're there. It's kind of like, you know, if Google was being at work, Facebook's being at a bar. I mean, you're there to socialize and talk to your friends, and, you know, and ads actually are a bit of a nuisance. People tend to ignore them. So I would consider it more passive, but it doesn't mean you still can't grab their attention, because nonetheless, security being event-driven business, if you've been broken into or you're concerned about something, it's on your mind, and you're gonna be looking for that all the time. So not looking for it, but you're sensitive to it all the time. So, but my point is the click-through rate is not even 0.5%. It's like, you know, 0.063. So the point is that you're going to get viewed a lot, and you'll show up less. So why even do it? This is from the advertiser's screen in Facebook, and there's some things you can do in Facebook that are very, very powerful as a marketer. Number one, you can obviously set geography, and you can actually set it very granular. You can do this in Google as well, but like I can actually say I want to find somebody in, you know, Columbus. I only want to show up to people in Columbus, Ohio, and then you can do demographics. You can say, you know, like, well, okay, so let's just presume people don't buy houses until they're, you know, 18, 20 years old, 21 years old. I mean, I don't know what the low would be, but let's say you're doing residential security. You may not want your ad to show up to 12-year-olds, right? So you can actually filter out their age. You can filter out if they're a man or a woman, or if they're married, or, you know. So I mean, sometimes I've seen people get as granular as, I want people in, you know, Provo, Utah that are married or engaged, because typically you buy a house, and are over the age of 21. So that's pretty cool. So you can really kind of narrow who sees your ad. You can also trigger interest. So you can say, I want people that are interested in moving, or, you know, any, you know, home remodeling, and, you know, so you can kind of trigger, you know, and it's kind of big brothery, but I mean, if people are having conversations about that, that's a component of your ad showing up. You can do education, but I've never felt that impacted too much on their search results. But some of their connections, if you're managing any groups or an administrator of some groups, you can target people in your group. That's probably, it sounds cool, but it's not real practical because most of us don't moderate a group. So, but the first three I think are very, very, very potent, especially around interests. So that's why you do it, right? If you want to target, white males that are 37 years old that live in Provo, Utah, that are married, you can actually do that through Facebook. Well, you can't really do that through many other advertising means. So paid search, we've got about 10 minutes. I just kind of want to hit some of these. So the bad news is about Facebook paid search is that less than 0.5% of the people are going to click on your ad. So your ad's going to be there all the time, and they're just not going to click on it. Another point, and I don't think I say it in here, but there's also a shelf life to your ad in Facebook, in that there's a point where it becomes just noise. So you have to always kind of manage that ad and keep it fresh. The good news is your ad's going to be showing up a lot. It's great for brand building. People will see your logo, and especially locally, and you only pay for when they click. And plus, especially if you're promoting your Facebook page, it's really neat because it's just something that kind of pops up more and more often, and it gives your brand a little more credibility. You do want to budget for that, like you would Google, and I recommend, I wouldn't pay more than $1 a click on Facebook. It's just one of these things where some of the words, they'll charge $3 and $4 or $5, and if you're gonna, if you're gonna spend it, you might as well do it on Google, where people are actually more actively searching. I would leverage targeting. This is really, as we said earlier, this is the real best reason to use Facebook. I would use it wisely and effectively, and I would have that for everything. And then I would write your ads very specific. The fact that you can go after, white men that are 35 years old that live in Provo, Utah, that are married, then write an ad that says, hey, white man that's 35 years old in Provo, Utah, I want to sell you securities. Not really, but create a very, very specifically worded ad that you're going after, because that's all it's getting shown up to, and that's a better shot at getting their attention. So take advantage of that capability they give you. If you're going to do it, then be very prescriptive of what you write. So we're at the end here. So the real question is, in summary, the question we asked in the beginning, is paid search worth it? I would say yes. In fact, it's pretty critical. But there's a big but, right? There's some caveats. Number one, be careful. It can get very expensive very quickly. What I like about paid search is that it has the capability of creating an exclusive lead where someone has searched and found you out and wants to connect with you. So it's great, but it can get expensive if you don't have the guidelines and guardrails to keep it in check. Number two, you need to make sure, if you do it, that you leverage the fact that you're local. That's your greatest strength. That's what people want to connect to. They want to connect that you're a local company, and that they can come over to your office, and that you know the local ordinances, and you know what's going on. You may know the police. You're part of the community. They love that. Leverage it. Don't blow that off, and don't try to pretend that you're bigger than you are. There's nothing wrong than being a good, solid local provider that people want to embrace. So don't dilute what makes you unique just because you want to appear to be bigger than you are. The third but, it is good. You do get instant traffic, but remember, you will always pay to play. Anything you do has a price tag on it, so just remember that. And it's not a good long-term plan on its own. It's a good part of a long-term plan, but you need, if you're going to do this and you really want to take your marketing to another level, you got to have a search engine program in place, and you layer it on top, and you augment it with the paid search. So we usually recommend doing it at the same time. So that's the buts. But so the big answer to the question is, it is absolutely worth it. Final thoughts, just on each. If I were to summarize it, Google, they're king. They just are. You can't beat it. And it's more important. And I'm a believer of Yellow Pages. It's more important than Yellow Pages, especially as mobile search takes off. Yellow Pages are good. Don't let the Yellow Pages rep sell you something you don't want, because they will sell you. You could spend $5 grand a month with Yellow Pages if you wanted, but you will never see any more money than if you probably just put a small ad in. I've yet to ever meet anybody that got anything beyond that. So, and we talked about it, I think, the last webinar or the webinar before, about even placement in the yellow pages and things like that. So if you missed that, go back to that webinar. But my point is that it's critical, and they are king, and that's where I'd spend the money. Final thought on Bing. I mean, it's decent, but the problem is it's gotten more expensive. So if you're going to spend the money, why not just double down on Google? Where Bing is cool is in search engine optimization. There's a lot of search engine optimization tricks that you can do that Bing gives you more credit for than Google will. So, if I were to kind of think of a strategy, I would spend more money on Google, and I would probably focus some of my SEO efforts on Bing and using their webmaster tools and getting your site ranked there. The last would be Facebook. So it's worth a look. Remember, it's still maturing. I mean, they really never even did advertising in the past, but they are now. I would never spend more than $1 a click on Facebook, and so that's just kind of a parting thought. So that's this month's webinar. We kind of moved fairly quickly, but we had a lot of information to cover. That's why it's recorded. If you want to go back and maybe slow this thing down a little bit and help digest some of it. But I wanted to move fast because honestly, I know most of the folks on here probably are not going to be doing this themselves, and so it's one of these things I wanted you to at least be smart about. So as you're working with companies, you know what you're doing, and that you don't want to get taken advantage of, because most security companies are operating under a slow margin, and or at least a finite set of funds, and so you don't want to kind of blow through that prematurely. In January, we're going to have our 5th webinar. We're going to talk about social media. We're going to talk about how to really leverage Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, and those kinds of things. So we're going to be talking about that. And then in February is our final webinar, and it's kind of our wrap-up webinar where we're going to kind of revisit a lot of nuggets of everything. And we're going to kind of tie it back to even our first webinar where we say, okay, now that we've talked through, kind of a real in-depth focus view of these, let's kind of go back and kind of wrap it all up in some parting thoughts. And that's it. For a copy of this presentation, once again, you can go to N2OMarketing.com, click on the Monitronics logo. You also can go to Monitronics.net yourself. And also below here is our phone number and contact information. If you ever need anything, we're obviously here to help support you. Renee, did you want to say anything in closing? Okay. All right. Well, I think we're good. So thanks again for being on the call today. If you guys ever need anything, let us know. And thank you very much. Take care.